What if you could consistently drive over 1 million in new annual recurring revenue year after year as a single person sales powerhouse? I've done it repeatedly, and today I'll show you exactly how you can too. If you're a B2B marketing leader or executive driving a go-to-market strategy, your success hinges on predictable revenue generation. Hi, I'm Bill Rice, a serial entrepreneur with a proven track record of multiple successful startups and exits. As the founder and owner of multiple agencies, I've mastered the art of being a sales team of one, consistently delivering over 1 million in new annual recurring revenue each year. In this video, you'll learn the actionable strategies, proven tactics, and critical habits that I've refined to achieve exceptional revenue growth and support effective go-to-market motions. These insights will empower you to scale efficiently, optimize your sales processes, and enhance your overall go-to-market performance. Ready to elevate your B2B marketing and accelerate your go-to-market success? Let's take a look at my screen. I'm going to share the exact template with you today. All right, let's take a look at the template that I use when I'm building out my B2B marketing go-to-market strategies. So first and foremost, just kind of like, who is this targeted at? Generally, I'm helping founders, entrepreneurs, early stage startups, but this also applies to this executive level, marketing executive. Maybe this is your first time sort of being in this leadership role, or you're building out a brand new sort of go-to-market motion. This could be with a new product, or potentially you've just kind of never gone outbound before. A lot of times when you're doing early stage startups, founders kind of have the relationships, build the initial client base, and then we've got to figure out like, how do we actually go to market and create this predictable marketing motion and revenue and engine behind it. So this is a template that I like to use. So first and foremost, and you probably heard this talked about over and over again, is this notion of ideal customer profile. But too often I run into situations and I work with clients where we just haven't thought enough about who this ideal customer profile is. And when we're talking about this, we're thinking about obviously the pain points and the things that the problems that we solve and those sorts of things. And a lot of times that's well thought through, right? So the founder or whoever sort of came up with the ideas, or the product manager who sort of developed the product, has thought long and hard about the problem solution sort of mix that we have and the matchup. But what we haven't thought about enough is, who are the people that are using that? What are their titles? Where are they? Are they moving into that title? Are they overseeing a team that has certain roles? And maybe those supporting roles will have a lot of impact and influence on the decision for this product. So again, there's a lot of layers to defining the ideal customer profile, really thinking through the size of the company, the size of the industry, the specific problem, how that problem occurs, the different types of use cases, the people who will ultimately make the decision, the buying portion of the decision, maybe even the mechanisms by which people buy your solution. So sometimes it's through an RFP, sometimes it's directly, sometimes it's a transaction or sort of a price point that you don't need a lot of additional sort of input or influence from in the organization. That role can sort of unilaterally write you a check. But in a lot of other cases, there are influencers, maybe the people who are actually going to use the product, and then you have an executive who's sort of driving the selection of the product. But it's good to be able to impact and influence and know who these people are and build a part of your go-to-market motion around those people that would potentially give support and reinforcement to that purchase. Again, lots of different scenarios. Sometimes there's a buying committee. So a lot of different scenarios to think about, but it is worth your time really going deeply and understanding and mapping out what does that ideal customer profile look like? Are there multiple? Are there different people and multiple people in the decision? Really sussing that out and spending a large amount of time on that. And then the most important part of this, especially typically how we go to market with these sorts of things, and how generally on a B2B sense, we spend a lot of our time going outbound or building audiences like that. A lot of that activity and list building and figuring out sort of how to get access to those roles and responsibilities is through LinkedIn, specifically Sales Navigator. So the other level of effort I like to do before I leave this task is be able to really boil it down to things, characteristics, features of LinkedIn profiles that I can find, that I can go into Sales Navigator and I can build a query that will reliably give me the results. So that feed that you see after you build this query are like 80-90% of those people that come up in that feed, they give you confidence that those are people that potentially need your solution and you would like to talk to. Too often, we define our ideal customer profile in two sort of non-concrete terms or things, characteristics and attributes that I can't actually target. So there are, obviously, LinkedIn's an incredible tool, so much better than it used to be, and so much better than our alternatives were in buying lists that some people did with, web scraping and stuff like that. But it does have some constraints. So look at the characteristics that are inside of that tool and try to take your ICP from kind of this high level. As we write it out, we write a nice paragraph about who this person is and what they're feeling and their pain points and all this stuff, and then turn it into very concrete database-like queries that I can replicate in Sales Navigator and give me a high confidence level in the people that show up, that those are people that I want to talk to. Okay, so we've got that first step out of the way, and we spent probably a significant amount of time, but again, this can be done in one sitting. You don't have to get it perfect at first. I'm sort of giving you all the things to think about, but again, as you're kind of throwing this down in your notebook for the first time, it's best to just kind of go at it with the background of what I'm sharing with you today, and then just getting a first draft down. All right, step 2. We want a clear and compelling, unique value proposition. We want to be able, this is the classic elevator pitch, I want to be able to say in a very short and concise way, deliver exactly what I do and who I can help. What problems do I solve and how do I solve it better than other competitors, and then how can I prove it? So you can see in this sort of lineup here in my template, specifically, those are the 3 things that I like to capture in that initial value proposition. And this is going to be my positioning statement. This can go on my sales collateral. This can go on my website. But I want to be really concise. I want to practice this. You're sitting at a conference, you're networking with somebody. What do? Like, oh, well, here's the problem I solve. I do it better than anybody else because we do this, and this is how I can prove it. Okay, now on to step 3. We want to think about what is the actual right go-to-market strategy. So there's a lot of different approaches to entering the market, right? There could be potentially a sort of a direct entry strategy where the founder, and this is the way most of them kind of work initially, but potentially you're kind of engaging with this video because you're beyond this stage. But early on, a lot of times there's some direct sales, there's some relationships, there's maybe some partnerships, but again, there's some ways to kind of enter that market in just sort of a more organic, natural way. And then from here, we start to think about sort of distribution, right? How can we scale things? How can we scale our outbound? How can we scale our inbound? And we start to sort of invest in marketing tactics. And again, a lot of these things we can do as a one-man show. So early founders, maybe you're, a marketing team of one as well. A lot of these things you can start. We can start with some content. We can build up sort of our SEO credibility. Maybe have some capabilities with paid ads. Certainly LinkedIn strategies are really viable. So again, sort of thinking about, what are the channels you're going to use? Where do you have the most experience? Where can you be effective? Where can you kind of leverage the resources and assets that you have at your disposal and sort of build those channels out? It's really important to think about each channel and the skills that you or your organization possess, because all channels are not going to be right for you. There are going to be some channels that either you don't know enough about or you don't have enough experience. You're going to waste a lot of time sort of getting up to speed. So this is the stage early on in go-to-marketing where you want to make sure that you're leveraging the channels that you already have capabilities in. And of course, there could be a longer term strategy, but initial go-to-market, you want to be successful. You want to sort of limit the resources that you're burning in order to get the product into the market, get some initial traction, some initial revenue, and get that groundwork going. And then from there, you can scale and start opening up channels that maybe you have less experience with. Pricing and packaging is really important. Spend a fair amount of time really getting concise and understanding exactly how you're pricing this product, whether it's services or software or true product. Think about how you package it together. Are there things that go together. You want to think about comparables in the marketplace. How is that product normally sort of presented in the market? Do you want to do something different? Do you want to align with it so you have a nice comparable? Are there certain add-ons that you want to do? If you're talking about services, this is really important. I think too often when we're selling services, we go in with too much of a loose approach, and so it becomes confusing. It's something, obviously from a service perspective, you have a good understanding of the complexity of doing that service, but you almost better serves you if you can productize those services so that it's concise and understandable and feels more like a product than sort of a broad, like less predictable, less understandable, more, sort of complex and convoluted service offering. So really thinking about how you price it to make it competitive, to make it attractive, and then also how you package it so that it's easy to buy and to understand. Step 4, we want to go towards actually executing this demand generation, right? So again, this goes back to our channels. How are we thinking about getting the demand or dragging that demand in? Are we building audiences through organic growth? Are we leveraging LinkedIn, founder-led content? Big proponent of that. Founder-led content or executive-led content makes the sales process and all the B2B go-to-marketing strategies work better and easier because there's this sort of higher level content that's already out in the market and produces credibility. Or when we go out into the market with our outbound outreach strategies, when that person receiving kind of that messaging goes to do just the least bit of research, they quickly see that you're a thought leader, or you have a lot of content, or there's a lot of expertise in what you're going out for. That can make your outbound strategies and your cold outreach strategies so much more effective. Paid growth, of course, a lot of times this takes some resources, so you want to probably have a little bit of traction with some of the more organic or things that you can kind of do on your own. And then ultimately sort of combining these things together, both the organic and the paid, it gives you enough saturation that word of mouth starts to really work because people see it, they ask their friends about it. I think this is something that's not as well understood in B2B. In B2C, there's kind of potentially people use products and they tell their friends and neighbors about it. In B2B, it kind of works a little bit different. You want to get to a level of saturation, and then what kind of creates the best word of mouth sort of virality, if you will, is people actually seeing you in the market and then asking their colleagues about you. And if those colleagues already know or have experienced you, that's kind of how word of mouth goes. So oftentimes there's some research being done by those folks, or they see something that maybe is a better solution. They start to ask their friends and colleagues who they trust. And if that becomes sort of reinforcing, that's when you get the easy opportunities. Okay, step 5, running founder-led sales and lead generation. Again, this is where most of you, I suspect, are started, and I think there's a lot of potential here. A founder can generate a lot of revenue. The only thing that's important is, of course, to sort of assess those assets, leverage them up, and then create sort of a system of being consistent. And the founder or these early executives in a startup being out there in the market, right? So you want to be engaging your direct outreach. You want to be leveraging LinkedIn. You want to have a CRM, even if you're the CEO or the CMO. There's nothing wrong with having a CRM or a database of contacts that you're doing regular outreach. You have a mechanism. Even as a CMO, I had a list, right? So when new things were coming out, it was really easy for me to push out the things that I was working on and get some initial traction and feedback. We can send cold emails, LinkedIn connection campaigns, and those sorts of things. But again, potentially building that audience. And then we want to sort of refine our discovery call process, right? So once we actually get them to schedule an appointment, which increasingly is the goal, prospects want control of their calendar, so there's no reason to kind of hit them with cold email and do all this weird stuff to kind of get them on the phone and do outbound calls. Just like simply use that scheduling link. But once I get on that discovery call or that demo, I want to be very organized. I want to know exactly sort of that straight line methodology to get them to a commitment. I want to have practiced it. I want to have thought about it. I want to lead them through proactively all their potential objectives. So I want that well packaged. And then, of course, additional sales enablement. So even when you're doing your cold outreach, it's great for you to have some additional materials that you can provide. In the B2B setting, a lot of times these buy decisions are being made in a committee or requiring the team to come around and support whatever the buying decision is. So a lot of times it's really helpful if you can have some collateral that internally in that organization can sort of be worked through and passed around. PDFs are still kind of the best form of that, or presentations that you link to. In the case of PDFs or even presentations, it's better to kind of pass that link over because that moves around so much easier. Drop a link in Slack, which is the way most of these folks communicate internally, but you can also sort of avoid firewalls and email and spam blockers and all that sort of thing. So keep that in mind. Either host in a Google Drive, use Google Docs and Google Slides, or kind of the Microsoft equivalent of those. But it's better to share out the links, but again, have them feel sort of well produced, feel a little bit more like a PDF. Okay, step 6. Thought leadership and content strategy. This is a big part of what Bill Rice Strategy does. Strategic content is everything. I'm such a big proponent of, again, founders, executive levels in these organizations that are doing B2B sales. Build some thought leadership, get out into the market in a high level so that when these executives and these solutions are coming up for decisions, there's already a body of work that's very attainable and accessible. So one simple query should bring up a bunch of stuff that you produce as an executive. Somebody wants to check out who the CEO is. Searching for that CEO should bring up a body of work that shows expertise in this thing that the salesperson is selling. Even individual salespeople and marketing, this often does not happen, but it can be immensely powerful. Each of them kind of creating their own personal brand and thought leadership content. The more of this you have, the easier your sales are going to be, because cold outreach is not going to be cold. When people do, again, just the most rudimentary amount of vetting and research, it's going to be very evident that you're a leader in whatever industry you're serving or whatever solution that you're providing. So this thought leadership and content strategy is so important, and it has never been easier. You can just simply post on LinkedIn. You can create video and publish. Obviously that's important because LinkedIn's changed their whole platform to entertain and make video easier and sort of give it more reach than anything else on their platform. Of course, YouTube's a strategy. It's pretty easy also because a lot of these professional publications like Forbes and Fast Company and those sorts of things have kind of let go all of their journalists out of their system. And so as a result, they're giving access to thought leadership type content being produced by executives like you. So although it's a pay-to-play sort of thing, it's relatively easy to get on the front lines inside of Forbes, inside of Fast Company, inside of Inc., the things that people are still reading and sort of drawing trust from. So make sure that you figure out and have some component of thought leadership and strategic content in your mix of go-to-market strategy. Then ultimately, and we always talk about this, so we probably don't have to spend too much time on it, but obviously it's important to set your metrics and your benchmarks. What am I watching? One thing that I do like to emphasize, because oftentimes it gets missed, is think about sort of the early trend lines that you're looking for. So a lot of times we look at our metrics in just closed volumes or leads and those sorts of things, but there are some incremental metrics that you're going to have to use that you're going to be looking at in the first 30, 60, 90 days of any go-to-market strategy that's going to give you some trend lines and patterns to tell you that you're on the right track. Maybe it is sort of what everybody likes to call vanity metrics, but are important, right? Are we growing some traffic? Are we growing an audience? Are we starting to get engagement? We want to have some of these incremental trends and metrics that we can measure to let us know that a strategy or a channel is starting to work for us or potentially giving us problems, and we need to make incremental early adjustments before waiting all the way to getting leads and deals closed. Okay, we spent a lot of time sort of planning and thinking about all the different facets. Probably the most important step on here is step 8. Be ready to take immediate action. Even if the full plan is not baked out, in that first 30 days, you need to start taking some action to give yourself a little bit of momentum and to gauge a little bit of that early reaction to your go-to-market strategy. So do something incrementally. It can be just to publish a small piece of content. It could be try a small ad campaign. It could be just to do outreach to a small subset of your list and get some initial gauge. But make sure that inside of what I often advocate, a 90-day plan or sprint, make sure that in that first 30 days, you're getting something in the water to give you some immediate feedback. So this is kind of the how-to approach, but inside of this document as well, which will actually be linked down in the description and totally yours to click on and grab for free. I'd love for you to, of course, sign up for my executive brief, which is my newsletter that has a lot of this kind of stuff in it all of the time, but absolutely click on it and grab it for free. But I do want to highlight that there is a template in here, something you could print out, you can scribble on. I'm a big fan of sort of planning these things analog first. And so go through these and give you some ideas of some things that you can start to put pen to paper and start to sort of document your thoughts around these things. It'll help you to identify some gaps and things that you might have missed and sort of fill some things out to get you on the right track, to get a plan in motion, and then ultimately sort of think about all of the different approaches you can have. And then ultimately don't forget about step 8. Like, what are you going to do in the next 30 days? What are you going to use resources? Have that quick early sprint to give you some initial early feedback, whether or not this go-to-marketing strategy is going to give you the traction and the impact that you're looking for. So hope that you enjoyed this. Like I said, a link to this directly and for free is down in the description. Go ahead and grab that. Before you do that, I would love for you to like and subscribe to the channel and get a lot more just like this. We'll see you on the next one.